What's up, everybody? I'm Cecilia Tames here with the Game Plan Educational Solutions, the best channel for history teachers to level up their mindset, their management, and their methodology. In today's video, we're going to be talking about something that teachers are finding particularly challenging right now. Have you ever had a lesson that you had to teach, but you weren't sure how to segue into it? Have you ever taught a lesson that you just weren't confident the students were going to find interesting or particularly appealing? And to be honest, you weren't quite passionate about it either. In this video, I'm going to show you how to hook your students into your lesson and make them interested in that content. And better yet, I'm going to show you how you can prompt your students and support them in recalling this information so that they're not only interested, but can actually remember what you taught them in the long run. So if you're interested in learning about this, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and make sure you turn on the notification bell so that you can be alerted the second a new video drops. This will help push us further up in the algorithm, showing us to teachers who may need to see this video and learn some strategies and techniques to hook their students, to entice their students, to influence their students to keep showing up as their best selves in class and be interested in their content and retain the information being taught. Okay, so first, as a disclaimer, I have to tell you, I'm a very strong proponent in the idea that we cannot force our students to be interested in content. We can't make them do something. But I do believe that we can influence our students' motivation levels, our students' interest levels, and our students' ability to retain information to the best of their own personal abilities. So today I wanted to share with you 5 different strategies and 5 different things that you need to keep in mind when you are trying to engage your class and get them hooked onto your lesson. Okay, so the first thing you need to consider is before you can get a student to be interested in what you have to say in your lesson, there has to be a strong foundation. So you need to ask yourself, did I take the time to get to know my student, to make them feel seen, to acknowledge their presence and their involvement in the creation of these lessons? So your students want to be validated, right? Like any audience, they want to be acknowledged. They want to know that you, as the presenter, as their instructor, they want to know that they matter to you, right? So how strong a foundation, how strong a relationship have you built with that class? Because, I've heard a lot of teachers say, well, I'm not here for the kids to like me. It's not my job to be liked by the students. I'm just here to teach. I'm just here to do my job. Reality check. Guess what? If your students don't like you, they're not going to listen to a word you say. Okay, just think about it for a minute. If you know someone doesn't like you, if you perceive that, if you're not certain, are you really going to show up at your 100%? Probably not, because you're already, in your mind, you're already approaching the situation with apathy, with distrust, with, well, how interesting could this lesson be, right? This teacher doesn't even like me. They didn't take the time to get to know me or my hobbies or things I like to do. So before you even engage your learner, you have to build a strong foundation and a strong relationship with your class. Okay, so the next thing you need to consider, and this may seem a bit outlandish, but it's the honest to goodness truth, and it does help to actually hook your class and get their attention. And that is, have a ritual. Have something that you do in your class that is common practice, that turns on a switch that gets them in the right mindset, in the right energy level, in the right zone to be receptive to whatever you're going to teach that day. So I'll give you an example. When I was in 8th grade, I had a teacher named Nancy Taylor, and maybe she's watching this, maybe I'll send her the link. But I remember every single day walking into her class, to get herself in the right mindset, to get us in the right mindset, she would make us chant this phrase in Spanish because, again, we were living in deep South Texas. So most of us were bilingual. And she would have us chant this phrase every single day when we walked in to show like we were ready, to get us hyped up. And she would always make us say con ganas, right? Like with energy, with that, keep that energy, right? Like make it happen. And in my class, years and years later, I had my students, our ritual was we would start off our class sharing good things. So kind of getting them in a positive mindset, because don't you see, if we don't influence our students' minds before we start sharing our lessons, they're not going to be focused on what you have to say. Okay, so we need to, second of all, have a ritual, have something that influences that mindset. Having a ritual creates consistency for your class, and consistency begets trust, right? Like, this teacher's reliable. I know that every day for sure this is a safe place. We walk into class or we log into class and there's something that this teacher does that's unique all the time, right? They play us a song, whatever you feel is unique to your own flavor as an educator. Okay, so the third strategy that I wanted to share with you, you need to be very mindful of how you sell your lesson, how you present it, how you portray it. You know, if I say, all right, guys, today we are going to analyze primary sources, yay, right? They're probably not going to be thrilled. Analyze usually denotes something challenging, and after hyping them up and doing your class ritual and getting them in a good mindset, they may be amenable to doing this activity because they know they are liked and appreciated by you, and two, you are a trustworthy, consistent person that worries about putting them in a good mind frame. But the fact of the matter is they're still going to do something hard and maybe something boring. So it's all in the packaging. How are you selling your lesson? If you need ideas about what to do if you're going to be teaching with some direct instruction that day, or you need ideas about how to get that started, make sure you check out my video on direct instruction for the social studies or the history classroom. Okay, so you might be saying, well, how do I sell my lesson? How do I package it attractively enough that my students will be like, okay, yes, like we're going to analyze today. So what do? There are some specific factors that actually help you sell your lesson. The first one of those being your energy. How much energy, enthusiasm, and passion do you bring to this? Now, I know that not every lesson we teach is the most exciting one. So guess what, friends? We're going to fake it until we make it. And students can read us like a book. They read our energy. They know when we're hyped up about something, when we're excited to teach about something. They can sense that. So we got to make sure we drink our double shot cappuccino that day, right? Specifically if it's something that's a little bit more challenging, so we can show up and be like, you guys, right? Today you won't believe whose diary we're reading or whose diary we're looking at or whatever, right? So the energy, the enthusiasm has a lot to do with selling your lesson. That's one. The other thing is, in order to sell your lesson, consider changing or creating a slight change in your approach, in your backdrop, in your classroom setting. When you change the physical setting, when you tweak or do something different than what you routinely do, those slight changes create a mental alert in your students. Think about it. It's like when you go to the grocery store, they rearrange a certain department and you're like, whoa, this wasn't like this, right? It creates an awareness in you because now all of a sudden you're not walking down the grocery aisles like a zombie. You're actually having to focus on, well, where's the peanut butter? Where's the bread, you know? So again, those slight tweaks in either the physical setting, if you are in a physical classroom, or, changing your backdrop or doing something different or showing up wearing a certain outfit or whatever. These slight changes are going to create alertness and awareness in your students. So like, I got to be focused. Like, my teacher's doing something different. What's going on? They seem excited. They seem enthusiastic today. Now, when selling a lesson, right? When presenting it to your class in a way to get them engaged, in a way to get them hooked and motivated, typically an audience reacts to visuals. So you want to sell your lesson visually by providing visuals. You want to use an anecdote, a story, a metaphor, non-history metaphor, to be clear, okay? Because the way learning works is we need to connect a known to an unknown. And so if we're using a history anecdote, it's not gonna compute for the students, right? So you want to use a non-history anecdote, you want to tell a story, you need to use a visual, something that is, and this is just human nature, but anything that's scandalous or spooky, something that's funny, something that is inspirational. Those are the type of visuals, metaphors, anecdotes you should consider starting with in order to really like trigger your class's attention. So far what we've done is we have put our students in the right mindset, right? By acknowledging them, by having that foundation, that connection with them. We have a class ritual that will make them feel that you're reliable, that you're dependable. You show up with energy, with enthusiasm, with passion. We talked about the importance of selling our lesson. And again, I mentioned to you, it's the energy, the enthusiasm you show up with, the slight changes in the physical environment, whether that be your background, whether that be your setting. We also talked about using visuals, anecdotes, or stories to engage our class initially. And again, I told you that the most effective of these visuals, of these metaphors, of these anecdotes are things that are spooky, inspirational, funny, scandalous. So those are the things that you can lead with to get your class like into the setting, get them involved. Now, let's say up to this point, you have been successful in actually hooking your class's attention and getting them to show up enthusiastic even during lessons that you know are going to be challenging. How do you sustain this interest, right? Because obviously some of our lessons span a 45-minute period. Some of us have a block schedule. How do we continue to sustain this interest so that if students are interested, that means they're paying attention. If they're paying attention, there's a higher probability that they'll retain the information. So in order to sustain the information, we have to make our students feel intelligent. Now you might be asking yourself, oh my gosh, like if this wasn't challenging enough, how am I supposed to do that, right? Now, let me tell you, it's not very hard to make a student feel intelligent. All a child wants is validation. All they want to know is that you feel they're smart, they can feel they're smart, and arrange the circumstances so that they can continue to feel smart. Now, why do we need to make the kids feel smart? Because if your students feel smart, like they're getting it, then they feel confident. And no person wants to participate in a game that they know they can't win. If I know I'm going to make a laughingstock of myself because I'm not gifted in a certain area, and my coach or my trainer doesn't make me feel like I can actually do this, chances are I probably will just be like, you know what, I'm just going to sit this one out, right? I'll just sit on the bench. But if you can find subtle ways as the class progresses, you're assessing, you're asking little questions that you know your students can answer. Now you may be like, well, yeah, but they have to answer higher level questions. I know, but we need to build them up with questions that they can answer, right? And make them feel like, hey, you got this, man. Look at you. You're so smart, right? Wow, man, that answer was fire. If you can boost their confidence, ooh, they're going to keep coming back, right? Because who doesn't like to win? Who doesn't want to feel smart? So building our students' confidence is essential to continue that cycle of keeping them engaged throughout the duration of our class. So throughout your instruction, don't forget to assess. This is how you know if they're picking up the material or if you need to change your approach. Again, this keeps them hooked because they know there's some accountability here. They're going to ask me some questions. So you want to assess, you want to guide, even if it seems frustrating or irritating that you have to probe or guide them through the questions. It doesn't matter. If they're coming up with answers that are close enough, that are getting to that point where you need them to be, guess what? You are continuing to support that feeling, that confidence in themselves. So they'll continue to pay attention for you. So continue to guide, continue to support. You boost their confidence, they'll keep coming back. Okay, so it's a little cycle. You gotta keep them plugged in. Finally, you need to create relevancy. Now, I gotta be honest, when I first started teaching, I was like, what does that even mean? It was just really challenging, particularly if your students are secondary, but on the younger side. To them, there's no pressing immediate relevancy, but you can create it. So for a younger audience, you wanna create instantaneous relevancy. If you are using anecdotes, like we talked about earlier, if you're using metaphors, if you are using visuals or stories that evoke some sort of emotional response from your class, by creating an emotional attachment to these historical characters, events, by really creating a parallel between what they felt, what they experienced, and what we feel in our everyday lives, the emotions, the fear, the apprehension that we experience, you are creating an immediate relevant connection to your class. And that's what's going to keep them engaged, because all of a sudden, these historical figures aren't some dead people in a book. They are somebody who, wow, they felt the same way I did. Really leverage that emotional intelligence, that emotional awareness and relevancy with your class. All right, y'all. So let's recap. Today, we learned about how creating a strong relationship with our students is the most solid foundation for having our students hooked in our lessons and continuing to engage and show up even when we're teaching a difficult concept. We also talked about the importance of creating a ritual. This will reinforce our relationship with our class, making us feel and seem to our students and be to our students more trustworthy, reliable, and the type of teacher that brings a different energy to a learning setting. The third thing we learned today was that it is important for you to sell your lesson. How you present and package your lesson has a lot to do with how it'll be perceived. And I don't mean make a fluffy PowerPoint. We talked about this. It's the energy, the enthusiasm that you use to present your lesson, the excitement that you use to present your lesson. And of course, we talked about the importance of utilizing visuals, metaphors, and anecdotes to sell your lesson to your class, to set them up so that they understand what you'll be discussing for your lesson on that day. We also talked about, in order to keep our class hooked and keep them engaged in the duration of the lesson, you need to make your students feel smart. You need to boost their confidence so that they feel that this is something they can tackle, that this is something that they can do and master. If you give them that confidence, they will continue to engage. Because remember, nobody wants to play in a game that they know they can't win. And finally, we talked about the importance of creating immediate relevancy. We said it's not enough to make parallels to something that'll happen, 3-4 years down the line, 2 years down the line. We need an immediate relevancy to history now. So how do we create that? By appealing to our students' emotional intelligence, by appealing to emotional connections that we can have for historical events, for characters, for people, for places, etc. If you found this video insightful, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and don't forget about that notification bell so you can be notified the minute that a new video drops. If you're interested in expanding your knowledge so that you too can be a more influential teacher, make sure you check out the link below and sign up to get more information about my Teach Like an Influencer program. As always, I hope you have a fantastic day. Until next time, class dismissed.